welcome to Redefining ABCD. Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
All right. So, in this week's Brown Art Network episode, we'll be having a conversation surrounding the film industry and ways in which it can improve for the better. Joining us in our conversation today is Urwa Zubair, a South Asian producer and filmmaker based in Los Angeles. Urwa has produced 50 digital commercials, and her clientele includes United Airlines, Haleon brands like Flonase and Voltaren, Target, State Farm, WB, and Paramount. And most recently, she's the producer of an upcoming feature film in development, BANI, a coming of age comedy drama on the misunderstood cultural practices of South Asian countries. So, without further ado, welcome, Urva.
Thank you so much, Sneha. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into producing, and maybe a little bit of a blurb on what producing for a film or a commercial looks like?
Absolutely. I was born and raised in Pakistan, and I came to the United States in my mid 20s. I gravitated towards cinema at a very early age. Growing up, my dad would take me to the cinemas in Karachi, and which were still developing, and they weren't necessarily considered as a family place at the time. The first time I ever saw New York or a movie was on the big screen, and once that gate opened, I got lost in the world of Disney and Pixar as a kid, and I would just find myself curating stories about characters or things, or just random people on the street that I would see, or like in the airports, and I would just be curious about their stories and their lifetimes. So, first and foremost, I would say I became a storyteller. And once I felt the power of storytelling and how it can make a difference in a person's life or create impact on, on a global scale, the natural progression for me was to think beyond just what is being said, but how it is being said. And that's how I came into producing. A lot of the times when people think the word producing, they think it has something to do with the financial management, which is just one of the many little things that a producer hat does, right? It is about you think about things like first, what is what is it that you have to say to the world? How do you want to say it that you think is going to create the most impact for the people or the lives around you? And then it's the best possible execution of that creative with the director and all the other creatives involved, and how you can reel that back with the finances or the resources that you have in place and the logistical management of it all, right? Like, for example, if you take a shot in broad daylight versus night, that entire mood can be very different just based on the lighting. So it's more than anything else, it is a very intricate puzzle piece that you have to solve as a producer, and that can only be fueled by your passion as to if you believe what you have to say out to the world.
Yeah, it's really great that you shared a little bit about producing because I know that there's a type of like understanding with people who are not in industry, like, oh, it's just like the project management or the financing. So it's great
Right.
that you're able to, I guess, you work hand in hand with the director, and it it's more than that. It's a part of that storytelling that you mentioned. Um,
Exactly.
Leading into that, for your feature film that you're currently working on, Bonnie, can you tell us a little bit about the themes or the big concepts that you're exploring in the project and what you are wanting the viewers or to expect to kind of understand, kind of within like what was mentioned before about like the misunderstood cultural practices?
Of course. So Bani is a coming of age comedy drama. It is actually inspired by my mother's life. And it is centered around a trio of sisters who are raised in a small town in Pakistan, and they're full of youth and joy, as any kid would be, right? And they crave freedom. You can find them just running across, jumping from roof to roof to go watch TV in hiding in their neighbors' houses, because they're trying to get away from what will people say or the restrictions that are imposed by the conservative society around them. And with each restriction, they're just able to find a way to turn it around and come back even stronger. And Essentially, I would say that it's a love story in all accords. It's a love story between a father and a daughter, between father and a son, between siblings, because this piece is about human empowerment. I think we have this ongoing fight, with the opposite gender or the generation above us, and we're trying to we think that what we believe is the right way to go. But through this film, we're actually trying to minimize that divide, and we're trying to create understanding as a norm, because the aim is not just to pinpoint a certain issue like a suppression or inequality or discrimination. It is to explore these, like, why do people believe this, why do people feel this, and that is an attempt to understand the particular beliefs, and essentially that is just going to create a lot more peace and love and a lot less hatred and conflict, because essentially both sides are fighting for the same thing, which is understanding.
That's awesome. And I guess kind of going off that, you know, um, I feel like a lot of movies and TV shows that take place in India, you are or in South Asian countries, like it just I feel like there's a conception there's people go in with an attitude of what they're expecting from a movie or TV show that's take place in India or in South Asian countries. Do you feel that sort of pressure to showcase the right showcase the country or that area in a light that people can understand or that is accurate to how it should be? Because I feel like that's something that do you feel that pressure of having to show Pakistan in a way that's correct and accurate, as opposed to something that Western culture has kind of put onto South Asian countries?
I believe in authenticity as the first, as the purest form of art. My job as an artist is to look at things objectively and not have an opinion. If I critique something from my culture and I put that in a critiquing light, then the rest of the world, or the Western world, where I am putting this mostly, of course, the global world as well, is going to see that in the light. So as an artist, when it comes to the cultures or the traditions, I'm going in with a very objective point of view, because I have my own opinions about it, and you know I believe that our cultures are absolutely beautiful, and they practice so much love and so much peace, and it is beyond just the taboo or the impression that has been created, in this climate. So authenticity, you can't go wrong with that, and your audience will resonate in different ways. Some people or someone may think of something as suffocating, and the other person may be able to see that, wow, this is coming from such a place of love, but also just being misunderstood. So, again, like, being authentic, and showing everything in the light of authenticity, you really can't go wrong with that.
No, and I completely agree. I think that's something that movies, and I think that's what makes comedy and just stories in general feel very grounded. Not judging the characters, not judging the environment, and just coming at it as this is the situation, this is what's going to happen, and then just letting the audience have an opinion. I think that's a mark of a good storytelling, and I'm excited to see how that kind of plays through in the film. And I guess kind of going off that a little bit, what do you expect to be the most challenging part about managing the production of the film, and what are you kind of looking forward to seeing come to life on the big screen?
As of right now, the film is in development and also in the financing, and every film comes with its set of challenges, which is really what makes the film. If anything, as we grow older and we're in our 30s or 40s or 50s, it's all those battle scars that make us what we are. It's the same thing with the film. For me, the most important thing, which we actually just touched upon, is just making sure that the layer of authenticity remains intact, because a lot of the times we worry about, we're fueled by this validation of success, or are the numbers going to rake in, or what is going to be the most, I guess, attractive to a set of audience, and we forget about the what it is that we want to say, or the message that we want to put out in the world. So for me, the biggest challenge is that we want to be able to capture the spirit and the heart in the purest possible form. And that can, again, sometimes be difficult when you're contending with multiple voices or seeking financing from an industry where this culture is not the norm and it is not the reality. And in a way, the industry that is financing this has to accept or see this as someone's reality, so that they can feel, yeah, this is going to find an audience, right? So the biggest challenge in my case has been making sure that we don't lose our voice in an attempt to finance this, from folks where it's, this is a bit of a foreign or an alien culture to them.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up because I think oftentimes when Western like industry tries to portray like the other side of the world, it does tend to be more romanticized or more like this can never happen in real life. Like this is only because the story is going in that direction. So I'm sure that's a really hard struggle, especially when like the individuals who are financing it might not come from the background or the purpose that you're trying to convey.
It really is. There's a very interesting story about Meera Nair, who is, a very celebrated and a veteran Indian director. She's made some beautiful films like Mississippi Masala and Salam Bombay. And she once mentioned, I was reading one of her interviews back in the day, and she said that I think this must have been in the 90s, perhaps, or in the 80s or 19, something of that sort, and she was seeking finances. So she would go into all these rooms to pitch her concept or her film. And there were majorly men of, Caucasian descent. And, they would tell her, well, no, this does not seem right. And it should be this way and it should be that way. And she said that, I found that very interesting, that through the pitching of my film, they were teaching me what my culture should be or how it should be portrayed, when I'm telling them it is actually not that. In one of her films, she explored a romantic relationship between an Indian woman and an African American. And she was told, no, I think it would be better if you made it a white hero actor, and let's just make this person white. And we don't think that this other route is going to sell or is going to bring in money. And she left that room saying, I respect it, I hear you, and I hope that you can make a film that has an Indian heroine and a white hero, and I'm going to go make the film that I believe in. Years later, that film was made, and Denzel Washington starred in that film. So just big props to her on this, right? That she stuck to her guns and she did not let anyone else command her. And today, I think that's why she is where she is today.
That's awesome. And do you think, just out of curiosity, do you think the shift from just regular released movies to the streaming services and all this stuff, and just the fact that there's so many more platforms that are more open to showcasing stories of people of color and stories of LGBTQ and just showing this diversity of film, do you think that has any part in being able to greenlight and like fund these films?
I think that Hollywood, as of lately, has most definitely figured out that diversity sells.
Right.
Back in the day, we did not have any, or people of color just had very minimalistic roles or had very stereotypical roles, that this is how South Asian woman can be portrayed and they can only have this tiny little part in it, or this is how a brown man can be portrayed in a movie. There were never any leads, or there were never stories that were centered around South Asian experiences or cultures or stories, or any other form, in fact, as well. African or Asian in general, and or Middle Eastern. And now that Hollywood has picked up that it is beyond just the stories that they have been telling through the course of this, for the past span of like the past 50, 60, 70 years, there has been a shift. Now there are shows like Rami. Now there are movies like The Big Sick. What has love got to do with it? There's so many, like Never Have I Ever, that are tailored around South Asian experiences and storytelling. Um, and you know, I, it's a weird thing to say out loud, but again, it is some unfortunately it is a formula. I wish that we were exploring these avenues in storytelling, and essentially the audience, they want to see it. They don't want to just be tailored to their own culture or their own stories. They want to see, oh my god, like this is what this looks like, this is what that looks like. They're genuinely interested and invested in cultural storytelling, which is why it is now coming to light. But I hope that we can one day see it beyond just a formula as to, this sells, so let's keep on making this, and actually believe that all forms of storytelling, all form of cultures, all countries, all races, their storytelling, the stories that we can curate and tell from them, they're just as important than just this one. Just this one culture, or the white medium that we've been going off of the past few years.
Yeah, I feel like the Western world is very much in its own bubble. Like I feel like we see it more, like more and more now that like the like non-Eurocentric industries are coming in, and you can tell in the way that they interview. Like, how is this like? You can see like these esteemed actors and directors in their country like come in and like, how is it like to be a new person in Western? Like, I've been in the industry for like 15 years. Like, this is nothing
Exactly.
new for me. So I hope we break that bubble, and so people like kind of like Bon Joon-ho said, like get over the barrier of the 6-inch subtitles to see what's all out
Yes.
there. Yeah,
Yes.
and that's a great segue into like the next question, because I think for us, I personally have not really seen many like representation behind the scenes of like female producers and directors, and we don't really see that as much on the big screen. So I know your movie does have the theme about gender equality and suppression in a like a family environment, but can you talk a little bit about like what kind of inequalities you may see in the film industry, kind of with the background that you have, and what steps do you think the industry should take to kind of close this gap, or what are some things like right now you'd hope like in like current female producers and directors could do to kind of help alleviate some of those inequalities?
So I would say, to call out the obvious, it would be the wage gap, right? And women in the industry somewhat operating as minority. Just some stats at the top of my head. As of 2019, I believe only 15% of theatrical films were made by women. And in the last, I believe, 95 years of Academy at this point, only 7 women have been nominated for Best Director. And overall, women comprised 24% of all directors, writers, producers, editors, cinematographers working on like the 250 top grossing films of 2022, which is actually a 1% decline from the year prior, 2021. And it's not because there's any shortage of talent when it comes to women. The Wedding Party, which was Nigeria's highest grossing film in 2016, I believe, that was directed by a female. In China, women directed 3 of the top 10 grossing movies of 2018, which weren't, I believe they earned about 100.36 billion yuan at the box office. In 2018, films that were cast with 20 to 30% minority enjoyed the highest median global box office receipts. In 2019, the honor went to films the cast were about 40 to 50% minority. So, and they were all released in international markets. So I think encouraging or opening the segues and just not having this be a man's world anymore, right? Storytelling, ideas, anything can come from any identity, any gender, any culture. And I think if we just embrace that and accept that, where the storytelling, as it's just going to thrive in it's in its most elevated form.
No, I think you bring up a good point because especially in terms of like storytelling, I think even like 5, 6 years ago, you can see there are so many more movies that there I mean, even in early, like, I guess I'm really just thinking like early 2000s, like 90s movies. Like, it's very obvious when a man is writing a woman character because it
Yes.
just is not. It's like, oh, I'm walking outside and in the dark at like 10 o'clock at night alone in the streets and I'm not scared at all. And oh, there's a car approaching me. My intention is to go and fight the. No, incorrect. You're
I hear
wrong.
you.
That's not
Yeah.
how that would go. Yeah. So like I think it's exciting to again come and see these female stories come to light in the last I guess couple of years as streaming services have boomed and there's now more of a larger platform for
Yes.
these writers to come and showcase what they need. And of course, because of this flip to streaming services, there's now a huge wage issue, and the way that people are creating that money is now having to shift. In terms of the WGA writer strike that is happening right now, what are your thoughts on what's happening and what kind of impact do you kind of see this taking on the film industry in the upcoming months? Because I'm kind of reading the news and it doesn't seem like there's going to be any sort of stop or slowdown to the strike, and everyone is just kind of on a standstill. So what are your thoughts on it, and where do you think it's going to go and affect the industry?
That's a great question. In my viewpoint, writers come up with what is being said, and other creatives like directors, producers, cinematographers, and a lot of other people, they work on how it is being said, right? And I'm not saying one is more important than the other. If the directors or the producers or the other above the line talent can secure stable employment durations or residuals or decent pay scales, um, I just question why is it any different for the writers? If we're scaling down and saying that, oh, their labor is not as extensive, at the end of the day, they have to sit and write while all the other crew has to be on 12-hour sets for X amount of days, we wouldn't necessarily be on that set if we didn't have that script or that piece of paper. So essentially, it all begins with them and what it is that they're telling, like we're working on how it is being said. They're working on what is being said. So you can't work on the how if you don't know what you want to say out anyway, right? And my thoughts on the impact, unfortunately, are darker than I would like for them to be, because I'm not sure that it is going to bring a positive output. I genuinely hope that I am incredibly wrong in this regard and that there is some kind of a change that is warranted out of this. But we live in very interesting times right now. AI is booming and it has the potential to take over or replace a lot of creatives. Beyond just the writers, there will, I wouldn't be surprised in 3 or 4 years from now we just hear, some film at some point had won an Oscar and we find out 3 4 years later, oh, it was written by AI, or with the help of an AI. Or I wouldn't also be surprised if 5 10 years from now we're creating films saying, oh, AI, like, create, they've already replaced graphic designers right now and illustrators, and they can create all of those images in XYZ. So now I even saw some kind of I think it was a Coca-Cola commercial that was made using AI, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 5 years how films are being made is, you know give me a scene where Bruce Willis and Ashwarya Rai are, in the mountains of Switzerland, and she is wearing this and he is wearing that, and they're walking, and then they say this, and then they do that, and boom, there you have it. Give me a wide shot of this, give me a close up of this, and then give me this of that, and this is what I want to see in the background. That's it. So there is a it's just a very interesting thing to navigate, because on one end the strike could warrant the change and they could get the rights that very deservingly they should be getting, or this could steer Hollywood or the filming industry in general towards a different path where they now start using AI. to write and to create in general. So I think only time will tell what comes out of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I guess out of curiosity, 'cause like how AI makes or generates those scenes is like using like historical data, so like works that have been done in the past to figure out what they need to make. So do you think the creativity or like the innovation aspect of the film industry would like maybe stall because I like while AI will make it easier to make these like types of shots and curate these types of images, I don't, it'll be like, I feel like it might be repetitive if we're using like past works as a reference, or like, how do you kind of see that, like, at least creativity maybe being effective?
I think there was something created by AI which merged Star Wars and Anderson style, perhaps.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a new thing. So you can you can take different styles or different things from different filmmakers, or all of these individuals who have really by this point created a name for themselves and their styles, and then boom, you have something new out of it. And then someone, for example, let's say Sneha ends up creating something, using this two three different people's styles, and she creates something out of it. Now I will use her style and then pair it up with Joe Swanberg's or Christopher Nolan's or something, and then I have something new. So even, I understand that there are all these, the historical data can somehow create things that are repetitive, but it also gives us the opportunity to blend and mix and bind and create something new out of it. It's kind of like painting. You mix different colors and make something out of it. So, but the biggest thing that I see with AI is like, at some point there has to be some kind of a pitfall to copyright issues, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
if Sneha has created a new style or something, right? Now there's going to be hundreds and thousands of people who are going to go try copy that and merge it with something else to create something else, and that is no longer Sneha's IP now. So it's a very dangerous territory. I'm not sure how it can be monitored, how we can even implement or place some kind of copyright laws on it. But I mean, I sure hope so, that there is some kind of a controlling factor when it comes down to it. Otherwise, it's just going to stay a wild west, and that's not a very thrilling place to operate from.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I think that also going back to the whole idea of like authenticity in film and bringing that, like, I don't I maybe I have a very cynical take on AI for creativity, just because it feels like, oh, but what about the people who are doing this by hand and like actually putting it together and being very mindful of like what they're doing? I feel like there's so much creation that comes from that process, and now we're eliminating that process altogether. It's like, I don't know how how well that's gonna go for
I
us.
hear you. Back when we hear from our mothers say, "Oh, back in the day we wore this and it was hand embroidered and like tille ka kaam," or like it was like it's like a luxury at this point.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it used to be that, and now the machines have taken over all of this, and it's no longer that. So I feel like our creations, or this craft is going to somewhat be seen upon in the same way. Or back in the day it was this was like how we see film now. When you're shooting on film, you're like, oh. So unfortunately, I think that might end up being the case.
So so sad. It's so sad.
I
It's
feel
gotta
that.
it's gotta come back around. I'm hoping. I'm hopeful that
I hope
it's gotta
so.
make full circle, and then they're gonna remake like creative thinking. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, sorry. Kirti, continue.
No.
To take over.
No, no, I hope so too, because we already see it. Like we're going back to monitoring, like in the music industry, we already see people like messing around with other people's voices and like saying like, "Oh,
Mhm.
Drake's saying this," and he's like, "I never sang this." So
Yeah.
hopefully it hits a chord with the industry enough to like start figuring out how to like maintain and monitor this. But
Agree.
yeah, I think shifting gears a little bit, talking a little bit more about Bani and South Asian culture. Um, you mentioned that a major theme of the movie is uh, misunderstood, like traditional practices of South Asian culture being misunderstood, or how they could be misunderstood. Could you talk a little bit more about that, and why you wanted to kind of bring this theme out in the movie, and also, in your opinion, How do you see us taking like us now as our current generation taking responsibility to uphold these traditional South Asian cultures and practices for like kind of keeping it going and kind of bringing it forward to the next generation?
You know, when we use certain issues and we say the words inequality or suppression, let's say, just because these are some of the themes of the movie Bani, and perhaps I'm saying this because I'm a woman, but we mostly think of women being suppressed or being discriminated against. Um, Bonnie is not a piece about just female empowerment. It is human empowerment, right? So it will also talk about the pressures a growing boy faces, right? In our cultures, a lot of the times we grew up seeing that they're getting the royalty treatment in the house. But maybe what we don't see and what men or boys in our culture may be battling with is that all of that comes with a very heavy price tag of these expectations to be successful or carry the entire family. May that be via kids or may that be carry the entire family financially, and to be forced towards certain things like stable careers. I just think that men in our culture also lose a lot, from their dreams, their passions, and so these certain issues, they're explored in all genders, not just women in the movie. And the cultural practices that come out of it, like the traditional roles that men and women have in our cultures, to this idea of men having more freedom than women, or and whatever the case is, like, oh, this is to protect women or whatever. I think it all just stems from fear and some belief that it's time sensitive. Our parents, they lived in a very different time. Their parents lived in a very different time. They did not have the tools that we have today. So I think it is just, again, just trying. We don't have to accept or we don't have to, sorry, agree with their point of view. We can just understand, and I think that that in itself is enough. You can understand and respect that this is your POV, but we live in different times now. And for example, if I were to ever have kids of my own, I would not want to steer the boy in one particular way and the girl in another particular way. You both are human beings above being a boy or a girl, and you both have dreams, passions, personalities, identities of your own, and I would want them to go and explore that. And my key would for them to be good human beings. So I think times change. We have to change with them, and we just have to allow all of our counterparts to shine. And it's all of those. We I personally really love all of our traditions and cultures, and I would want to carry them, but I would not carry the restrictive or any kind of elements that can restrict or can create the opposite of understanding or love.
Mhm. Yeah, that's super important. I think that's really important to highlight too. Like when we pass down traditions, is I know a lot of times when we see it, it's very a negative approach of like, oh, this is the stereotypes that we have, like this is our culture, and like it's very negative approach. But I think it's really great that we should that you mentioned that, because like I think we could reframe what how we see these traditions, and so that when we pass it
Yes,
down it's a better understanding, like you said. So it's more healthier relationship to culture and traditions, rather than like I just want to close this off and never like address this again in the future.
exactly, exactly. That's very well said.
I want to say I feel like the community is also just collectively also having a better sense of what words to use. Like we're finding the correct words to be able to communicate with each other. Whereas like I think a lot of times it used to be a very like and this might still be the case in a lot of families, but I feel like there's a lot of like just do it, no questions asked. And I think that that conversation is starting to happen a little bit more with the help of media and the film and TV and just being able to see that on screen. But also just I think we're just finding the better words to be able to identify what we're going through and being able to communicate that better, which I think is very exciting to see just in general within our community. Um,
Right.
I don't know, I guess kind of switching gears back to just the industry as a whole. But Bonnie is designed to be funded largely by Hollywood studios, but to be produced and filmed in South Asia. So, how has that process been like for you? You know, were there any challenges? Have there been any challenges so far? And are there any challenges in terms of like set location and like just overall organization of the production that you're kind of looking forward to and also foresee to be a challenge?
You know, the biggest challenge is again coming in the form of balancing the trust, or I guess the better word would be the belief from the financiers, but also remaining authentic and true to the culture and tradition and the spirit in itself that we have to, share with the world. Like I previously mentioned, that our motivations can sometimes be swayed by success and validation. And we then somehow end up creating things that are based on the formula of mass appeal. But to operate without fear and without any need of attracting audience or money or numbers is very rare and pure, and something you would argue an industry getting back to on its feet can't afford, right? Like an industry in Pakistan, for instance. But you'd be surprised what wonders it can do. For me, I think that one thing that um, it's very important to attach the right people to this movie, because ultimately we have to remain authentic and we have to remain true to what it is that we want to put out in the world. Um, and the other thing is, once we've secured the financing, the entire production is going to take place in Pakistan, and that industry is it's it's not comparable to Hollywood. I'm not going to say that that industry does not exist or is not capable, because it is. There's so many talented people out there that it just blows your mind. So it's just a matter of ensuring that we have the right kind of creatives and the right crew attached to this piece. But executing something in a country like Pakistan is very different than executing something in a country like America, because there's unions here, there's laws here, there's ease of access here. All of those things are not so much present in Pakistan. So that production is going to bring forth its own set of challenges. But then again, those challenges and those battle scars are essentially what's going to make the film. At this point, I'm very much focused on making sure that we can attach the right people to the film who actually believe in what the film has to say, and not so much. So I understand it's part of the business and you have to focus on the numbers it can create, the mass appeal, but we just can't lose sight of what it is that we're trying to create.
Yeah, I think it's really unique that the financing or the start comes from a Hollywood, like, I guess, not standard, but like area, like you mentioned, with like kind of what they expect to kind of manage a movie, but then it's set in a completely different culture where they run things very differently. And I think that will bring like a very unique voice, or like you mentioned, it'll bring out the authenticity that you guys are looking for. Um, and I guess as we kind of wrap up our episode today, we like to kind of end with a few questions to kind of talk about like advice and like thinking back in your career, just especially with some of our listeners who listen to this segment really want to see if they can break into this career path, or if what it takes to survive in the industry. We know, like, when you share with us kind of like your bio and your history of like works that you've done, you have a very notable like clients. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you were able to kind of network and get those clients, and if you had any tips for anyone trying to break into the industry or build their um, own like history of work, like what advice would you give them as well?
You know, I think for me, it has been a combination of right time and right people. Actually, has been a very big blessing in my life. As filmmakers, we want to create things that can scream what we have to say in the world. And that can sometimes be isolating. And film or storytelling is not an isolating medium. So when you open up to the world, you see that there are many people who believe in your vision and your message, and they will help you tell it or put it out in the world. And you just have to do the same. You have to open up, believe in other people's messages or what they have to say to the world. And whatever it is that you can find that you resonate with or you believe in, help them. And that's the best possible way to foster relationships. And filmmaking or this industry, a very big part of it is networking or fostering relationships. And it's not, when I say the word networking, um, I don't think anyone has to go in thinking, what can I do for this person and what can this person do for me in return. It's just believing in your co-creators and helping them. Just like you'll get your part of the help along the way, right? So I think for people who are starting out or people who are wanting to um, um, enter the industry, I would say that when you're creating something, just ask yourself, why do you want to say this? Or why do you want to make this? That one question is going to help you find the right people to do it with. And that's one of the biggest things, really. And when you are ready to break into the industry or take a step, throw your ego away. There is absolutely no place for it in this industry. When I started out, I was helping in the wardrobe department in a feature film. And there was a time when I was putting socks on actresses' feet. You can't feel any ego towards it. I would look at the frame to make sure that there weren't wrinkles on her shirt. And, you might think that it's not significant. Who cares if there's wrinkles on her shirt? But no job is too small. If you are really passionate about storytelling and filmmaking, and if you really believe in this, right, then you just have to dedicate yourself to the craft. We all start from the bottom of the barrel. That is a given. There's no shame in it. There is no ego. There is no job that is too small. Just do your part. Love it, care about it, give it your best. That's the part that you can do, and then let the universe do the rest.
That's amazing. And I guess in terms of maybe viewers who maybe have that script in their hand or have some key players kind of figured out and are looking to kind of fund their project now and now trying to find investors, what would your advice be for them? And how do you think how could they maybe go about taking the steps to make their movie seem marketable or um, not even seem, but maybe like to make it more appealing to investors?
I would say, depending on if you're doing a short film or a feature film, a lot of the times when it comes to short films, you're not necessarily going to get studio funding out of it unless you have like a very good track record of it. Because short films are not going to bring any kind of profit in return. They're not going to bring in numbers, right? Crowdfunding is an absolutely fantastic way to go about funding for your short films. Back in the day, I made a short film called Silver Cord, and we were able to get about $8,000 in crowdfunding in a matter of a month. So it really is about, you go and you make a video about what it is that you're making. You just really put in your heart and soul into it. And you're essentially just think of yourself as a seller as to what it is that you want to put out in the world, why you want to put that out, right? And it will find its audience. There will be people who will resonate with it, will want it, will want to support you, and that's one way to go about financing. When it comes to feature length scripts or maybe television scripts or something of that sort, this industry is very much about who you know and how you can get your foot in the door. A lot of the people, you may not know the people who can maybe get you, who are sitting behind those closed doors, but you may know someone who may know someone who can get you through that door. Because essentially, you just have to remember, what is that Netflix show with people in the red jumpsuits? Um,
Money
Oh
Heist?
shoot. Yes. Money Heist?
um, I'm sorry, say that again.
Money Heist?
Mm, no, not Money Heist. I'm blanking on the name of that show right now. And
Squid Game?
there, Yes, thank you for that.
Okay.
So the director gave up on the writer and director. He gave up on that script. It was said no to for 10 years before someone believed in it and thought, no, this would actually be very good. Let us greenlight this, you know? So when you write something and when you're ready to get into the door, just you just have to be patient knowing that you're going to go through multitude, like a huge tsunami wave of people, and you're going to pitch it over and over and over again. And each time, just don't let it become robotic or don't let it consume you. Just remember, why am I doing this? Remember that passion or that what you have inside for why you're doing this. Somebody will believe in it, somebody will bite. A film or a story always has its way of finding its audience, and you will find your way to your financier or the person who believes in it or resonates with it. But essentially it is a lot about start sending it to start sharing it, start pitching it, start with your friends, start with your family, then start go out to different kind of pitch festivals, or pitching communities or like writers communities. Just branch out, find different kind of groups where you can go and pitch this and practice this and make this better. And essentially, you will meet someone who knows somebody who you should go and pitch this to. And that is, and that person may come back and be like, I don't think I'm the right person for this, or this is what I'm looking to fund right now, but I know somebody who could actually be interested in this. And that's it's just like this connected spider web. And once you latch on to even the whatever end you latch onto, you're going to find your way to wherever your house is. So it's just that you just have to really put yourself out there.
That is amazing advice. And I'm just going to leave it there because this is great. um, and with that, we will conclude this episode of Brown Art Network. Thank you to our listeners for sticking to the end, tuning in. Thank you, Urwa, of course, for coming on. We are sure to look out for BANI in the future. And if you would like to get in touch with Urwa regarding BANI or any of her previous or future body of work, we'll have her social media linked in the episode description so you can reach out to her. And yeah, go check it out. So again, thank you so much, Urwa, for having this conversation with us. We
Pleasure
had
has been mine. Thank
great
you so
time.
much for having me.
Of
Yeah.
course. Thank you.
So before you kind of leave us today, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Ravi Ray Audio. You might have heard that our intro and outro music is a little bit different this season and is definitely upgraded to a next level. That's all thanks to Ravi Ray, who was our last guest in season 2, and he agreed to help us out with our music for season 3. So thank you so much, Ravi Ray, for all your help. And if you guys want to get in contact with him to collaborate with any projects or work with Ravi Ray Audio, we are linking his information to the episode description so you can reach out to him or see all the other projects he's done. And thanks again, Ravi, and we'll see you guys all in the next one.